Is mental illness caused by demons/spiritual, or is it physical? So, notes that I forgot are at the top, or things that I forgot to say are at the top. Abuse makes you the portal for demons to come through. Abuse is okayed by religion. Opening story. I mentioned the whole thing with December of last year and January of this year, with the whole storm shelter thing, and it was snowing and all that, in a couple videos. And one of the things that I forgot to mention, which was really important, that I've been wanting to make a video about, but I completely forgot about till going through my old notepad, is this whole situation where this lady on the van was talking to somebody, and she was like, she kept telling some people that they needed to stop abusing their daughter, and she kept telling them, y'all need to stop beating that girl like that before you make her ASS crazy. And they never listened to her. And she said now the girl's homeless, walking around talking to herself. The usual story of fractures and being torn apart, pretty much. That's the opening example before I even really get into everything. I can go ahead and say that it's already a known fact that the chemical imbalance thing isn't true, because for one, if you had a chemical imbalance, they could give you a blood test for that and tell you. So there's that already. Cause number one, because I'm reading my notes, they're kind of confusing. Number one reason for demonization in the Western world is abuse/trauma. All abuse is a demonic ritual that causes brain damage, splits/fractures/MPD or multiple personalities, soul fractures, and voids /God-sized voids. The victim is the portal to bring the demons over, especially in abuse situations where the abusers know that they're doing a demonic ritual, and that's the complete goal of the abuse. So in SRA, or people who are only doing SRA. All mental illness is different forms of double-mindedness/splits from trauma. And as people may already know, schizophrenia means split minds, but realistically, all mental illness is just different forms of having a split mind and trauma symptoms. It's also a way to pathologize trauma, and also just different cultures, which is the racial side. So, all mental labels are off branches of CPTSD and PTSD on a spectrum. When someone says the mental illness runs in the family, they really mean abuse is going on and everyone is traumatized, but the head abuser, top Jezebel, won't take accountability for screwing up their kids. But typically the scapegoat is labeled off with the label/mental label as a form of manipulation, gaslighting, and even a word curse. Eventually drive the generational curse breaker insane. Labeling is a form of child sacrifice, as well as just sacrificing the kid to the medical system of really any branch. I wanted to talk about for a little bit the whole thing with abusive parents and /Munchausen parents and the medical system working together to abuse people and doing things like claiming a 2-year-old is schizophrenic. The only way that somebody that young would already be schizo, or maybe possibly even have DID, is if they've been getting severely SA'd from being a newborn on up. That's the only way. That and the parents being on substances, but still being SA'd. And a lot of times, they really have DID, but of course, all mental illness comes from trauma, so if they really did have schizo, quote unquote, then, it'd still be from the trauma, but also, it's just a lot of symptoms that somebody wouldn't even be able to show at that age. But one of the funny things about the medical system is that a lot of mental labels are never made to be given to somebody under a certain age, but they do it anyway because their job is to abuse and help abusers and make money off of helping to further traumatize and gaslight abuse victims. And so they'll throw these labels onto people that really shouldn't have the labels, just like how psychotropics were never made to be given to anybody under 25, but of course newborns on up get them all the time. In fact, probably most their victims these days, and really for a long time, is youth. And the reason that they weren't supposed to be given to anybody under 25 is because they're made to turn off the neurotransmitters that make the body work, which leads to all types of mental, neurological, and physical issues, health issues that are permanent, even autoimmune diseases like cancer and stuff like that. And they cause brain damage and they shrink the brain because they're made to block the neural pathways that make the body work, which is why they also cause a lot of different things that people end up dying from eventually, but sometimes really young. And so you're an adolescent from 9 to 25, and the brain supposedly finishes developing, at least mostly, by the time you're about 25 or 26, but that can depend. But depending on like the trauma you have and how long you've been getting drugged on these substances, these neurotoxin psychotropic, your brain damage may just be permanent. It may just be too late to really finish developing, and it may be too damaged and too strunk and underdeveloped, even in your 30s, and it may just be whatever at that point. Another thing is that, especially with psychosis, it's known to start around somebody's like mid to late 20s, sometimes early 20s, because after 25 or 26 is when, at least according to the federal government anyways, your parents are expected to not completely financially support you anymore. And so when people are sent out into the quote-unquote real world to like work and stuff, at least by people's narrative about what age you would start doing that, that's when people will commonly go into psychosis because, one, the trauma comes back up. If they left their abusive family system finally, their repressed memories may come back up if they're in a safe place. And then the stressors of like trying to work a job and different realizations about how the world is when it comes to like the matrix and career type stuff and maybe college, that really fractures people or brings up a lot of different splits and personalities that they didn't know that they had or forgot they had from their abuse, and then they may go into psychosis. That's why it's really common for people to not even develop or start showing signs of these types of issues till like 25 plus and stuff like that. And of course, schizo is a racial label as well. And I already had the video about the lady in a Munchausen mom support group where Munchausen women get together and talk about how their kids are all schizophrenic for some reason, but they're supposedly fine. This one lady was saying that her 4-year-old seen an angel, or said that he had an imaginary friend like an angel, and she was trying to, of course, say he was schizo. And people were saying, well, it's normal for kids to have imaginary friends. Now, me personally, I never had that, and I always knew that wasn't normal, but as far as seeing the angel thing, or really just seeing anything spiritual, babies especially are like really in tune with that type of stuff, so it makes sense if he is seeing an angel. The angel's probably trying to protect him from her, because she's about to try to throw him into the mental health system. And it's really unfortunate these systems even exist, and people have their different excuses for why they don't care about them existing. But she's trying to start him on the Cash for Kids system, mental label bullcrap young. Okay, so next thing, 2. Metabolic issues. Some schizo / early dementia, because I do believe that a lot of people, especially younger people who actually are showing symptoms of something that get labeled off as schizo, may have early dementia. But either way, I believe that like both can really be caused by metabolic issues / diabetes of the brain, like ADHD, Alzheimer's, ADD. Not that I really believe in that stuff too much, but then I list off diabetes type 2, diabetes type 1, mitochondrial dysfunction, which can also be caused by the neurotoxin drug. Parasites, FODMAPs, which is I forgot what that actually means, but it has something to do with like food. Cars, but I put cabs. Bacterial overgrowth, SIFO, which is small intestinal fungal overgrowth, although I meant to put bacterial overgrowth and fungal overgrowths. Heavy metals, plastics, GMOs, human meat, red 40. I could also throw in HEC 293. A lot of people forget about that stuff. Everybody's talking about Soylent Green, which I've only ever heard that term before recently, but like as far as the human meat thing, like I've always known about that and always heard about that. But like people aren't really mentioning red 40 or the HEC 293 thing anymore. Brain damage, etc., iatrogenic brain damage, stuff like that can cause this stuff, which still really goes hand in hand with trauma. So metabolic issues and trauma can be a physical cause. 3. The chemical imbalance tale is already known to be a lie. If it was true, they would just blood test you for it. The drugs were never intended to be given to anyone under 25 due to destroying brain development. They create a chemical imbalance that isn't already there because the neurotoxin drugs are created to turn off the neurotransmitters that make the body work. So pretty much the idea behind it was turn off the brain, turn off the symptoms, and then the people around the person no longer have to deal with the issues, quote unquote, or really the people around the person can now sedate the person enough to not have to hear the person make noises all day or to just be able to do whatever they want to do to the person. Like two of my brothers, or both of them on my mom's side, because that's where all the cash for kids system stuff happened. They went through the usual bad black boy ADHD stuff and they were both forced on the drugs. They made my younger brother try to unalive himself at maybe like a 7 or 8 or something, maybe 5 to be honest. And then my older brother, when the whole thing happened to him, one of the things that they did to him was make him just sit down and stare off into space, and he would slob, he would just sit there and pee himself, all types of stuff. And another quick add-in, they made my younger brother not be able to eat either. In fact, they made both of them not be able to eat. Well, I wouldn't even say sedate. Like, a lot of people say that, like, they make you like a zombie, but everything isn't like heroin, meth, Adderall, and Ritalin. Everything's not like those type of psychotropics. I know for me personally, I just was severely sick, and I was actually left chronically ill. And that's another story, but I talk about that pretty often anyways. Well, not pretty often, but I have a couple videos about that and me working to fix my iatrogenic metabolic issue / mitochondrial dysfunction, and the whole thing with dropping down 80 pounds at 14, no longer being able to digest food and different stuff like that, and how I've been working on curing that myself actually for a few years now. But anyhow, that was the idea. So like, your victim that you're essaying keeps fighting back, well, just give them these drugs that give them colon cancer, or puts them in 16 plus hour comas from serotonin syndrome, and now they can't fight back. That's pretty much the point of psychotropics. Oh yeah, and another thing, something I noticed about the whole cash for kids system thing is that I wasn't even really in this branch with like the drugging and all that long. Like, I knew people that had been in there, and they've been in over 30 placements from starting at 12 to 13 somehow. I was in a lot of different branches of the cash for kids system though, but as far as like the more mental health system leaning branch, I was only in 2 placements, I think, really. And I wasn't even drugged for a year. And that's the funny thing about it. I wasn't even drugged for a year at 12, and I became chronically ill. That's like the really crazy thing about it. It's kind of funny though, because when I ran to Cali, I had the same health issues, and even some worse health issues than people who were on meth, heroin, fentanyl, and all those different drugs, crystal meth. People that were on 12 street drugs at once. I had the same, and even some worse health issues than them. It's like so many other people I know have been on these drugs since forever. Like I'm in the last placement when I tried to escape my abuse situation the first time, which I don't even really count that because I wasn't even in there a week. But in that one, I met this one boy who had like burn marks down the whole side of his body, and he had to get surgery because his abusive parents, his dad specifically, would beat him with a barbed wire fence and set him on fire. And so he had to get surgery. And when he came in, he was 8, and he was talking about he got put in foster care, and he was adopted eventually by his aunt, and how his aunt had to take him off all the 12 plus different drugs he was on, and how they were screwing him up and everything. And this was an 8-year-old, and he got put on these at first at either 4 or 5, I think 5. And it's like, your abuser set you on fire as a quote-unquote child, the children people claim they care so much about. Your abuser set you on fire, but you get drugged and you get labeled as a bad guy. Although he got put in here by his school because, of course, commonly with people with like deformities, quote unquote, I guess I could say, I don't know if that's like really a good word for it, they get bullied for it. In fact, throughout the different cash for kids system branches, especially with the school system ones, I actually met a couple people who got put in the placements that they were in just because they were getting bullied for having birth defects and they had to defend themselves. And he didn't look bad or anything, which I don't think anybody's ugly anyways, but I mean, he was still like cute or whatever. I know it's probably gonna sound weird, but I mean like a baby, obviously. And it didn't mess him up that bad. The surgery definitely turned out well, but people of course are still gonna bully you just for like the scars he did have left. And it wasn't even that serious. Not that there's a reason to bully somebody for that anyways, obviously, but it's like, people are just really screwed up is the point I'm trying to get at. And so he was getting bullied at school for having burn marks down one whole side of his body. And also because like for the surgery, some of the skin that was used for like his face was like from his head. It's hard to explain. And so like due to like the skin cells there, like he had hair growing on like his chin and stuff like that, and like on his cheek. And so like people would say he was 8-year-old with a beard and stuff like that. And so he hit one of the kids in the face at school, and of course the school put him in the mental health system branch of the Cash for Kids system. There was even this Mexican kid in there that got put in there for having weed at school, but he got out of there by just constantly saying, "No habla English," for a week or so. And it's like, this is exactly why school is not a safe place for abuse victims. School system, wait a minute, the teachers are Cash for Kids system staff. All mandated reporters are actually. And the other kids in there don't make it any better. They will work together against you, especially if you're an anointed or prophetic person, to further traumatize you and make your abuse situation way worse than it has to be. That's why, honestly, I would say that if you're in a bad situation, you're not in school, you're honestly better off. Like, some people who didn't get to go at all will have this idea that, like, oh, if I was in school, there'd be somebody to report. No, there wouldn't. That's honestly not true. And either way, nothing would happen, because you have to save yourself. But it's really unfortunate how that goes. Like, I even remember this one girl in there who nobody really liked had told him that he looked like Freddy Krueger. But she was like what people would call like a dumb blind. That's what people are calling her. But I mean, I don't know. That's not really a good excuse. But yeah, so there was that. But yeah, he was on over 10 plus drugs. And then it's just like that other boy I mentioned pretty often, that I often refer to as my brother from usual story. He was a foster kid. He was getting beat up by the staff with sticks and stuff at the orphanage. His mom wasn't allowed to get him back, even though he was better off with her, even though she was abusive too. But it's better to be abused by families than by strangers while getting trafficked and being homeless. This one group home type placement, and he was 9 at the time, and he was on 12 plus drugs, because this place was heavy into drugging people. That last place when I was in the first time I tried to escape my abuse situation, they weren't into the whole drugging thing, actually, not like that. And also they did give people the right to like refuse drugs. It's like this one girl, she identified as depressed. She was just in an abuse situation, of course, and she was on some type of like antidepressants, but they made her not be able to go to sleep at night, so she was crying about it, and the staff were like, "You don't have to cry about it, we're not going to force you to take them." And they still let her go home on the next day, which was a good thing. It's like the staff were still really like not it, but I would say they were more childish and just like straight up abusive. So it wasn't like what I was used to. So it was still pretty good. And also I wasn't even in there for like a week, so there was that. And one of the things with this is that like when you run away, if they don't put you in jail, they put you in a mental facility, and there's a lot of manipulative stuff with that. But that's how the Cash for Kids system is. Stephen Darby did say something like this, which I have a video about. But just like this other dude said, quote unquote, when the mother is psychotic, they treat her children because that's how power works. And then another story I could throw in before I get back to reading the note. This is really common for full-blown SRA sex trafficking victims, and even people in like just lower-level SA situations. When they try to unalive themselves due to being SA, or they just claim that they're going to, they get locked up in these placements and told that they're just crazy and that they just need to be on drugs and stuff, and when you're being abused, just count to 10. Another thing is that I know in the first placement, there was this girl there that was 5, maybe 4, but I think she was 5. And actually she lived in my neighborhood, but I didn't know this till a while later. She got put in there because pretty much her parents were like what people would consider, or well, the real white supremacists at the top would consider quote unquote white trash. So like they were on meth and stuff. And it's really funny because typically white people only really live in like the hood, or more commonly trailer parks, which are mostly white people typically like in like rural deep south wooded areas. But anywho, if they're on meth, that's the common reason that they'll be living in those areas, or like they have like serious health issues, and so they were like on whatever, all different substances. The girl's relatives, I don't even know if they were her parents. I know one was her mom, but I think like the other one was like some other relative. They were fighting or whatever, and so she said that like she was gonna she grabbed a knife and threatened to like unalive herself. And so that's when she got locked up, and like her parents had even gotten into a methed out argument at the hospital. They were like arguing over nothing really, and there was that. And of course the staff don't care either way, you have to save yourself. But she was forced on a whole bunch of different drugs, and the staff would call her fast and grown because we were playing cards, because that's what you do in prison. And I said something about the deck of cards. She thought I said D-I-C-K. She couldn't differentiate between the word deck and D-I-C-K. And also, like, I don't pronounce stuff the best, so there's also that. And she was like, oh my gosh. And then the staff was like, yeah, she's grown because she's only 5 years old and she shouldn't even know what that is. And that just shows, like, her situation, to be honest. And then she was sent home with a whole bunch of drugs to take. It even reminds me of that last situation where the staff were telling me about, like, how they'd rather for me to be in a placement because my mom wasn't a safe person and they feel like she was starving me at home. All that stupid stuff, which that's a whole other video, really. There are different little excuses to make money off of my situation, pretty much. And they were like, you know, sometimes kids come in here and their parents curse them out. Oh yeah, because my mom and my older and elder sister came in there saying some crazy mess. And then after they left, the nurse was like, that was terrible, because my mom left because she was mad because the nurses didn't want her to be in the room with me without them in there. And she was like, yeah, and they wouldn't let me come in here to see you. And then supposedly they sent me off without even asking parents' permission, but I doubt that that's even true. But the thing is, everybody just sees you as, like, something to take advantage of. You're an abuse victim money grab, so nobody's really going to tell you the full truth about anything. One person's going to tell you one thing, another person's going to tell you another thing. That's why, in systematic Ramco abuse situations, it's hard to ever really know what's true and what's not, because everybody's lying so much, and there's a lot of different stories going on at once. But anyway, the staff was like, we've had people come in here and their parents curse them out, and they've asked to take some meds to calm down. And it's like, so you get cursed out, but you have to be the one calmed down because you're crying because you're in a situation where you should be crying. Now, me personally, I'm not even emotional enough for all that crying stuff, but that's how the system is. It makes me think about the whole, if they can't get you to obey, they get you to rebel. Which I think was said by the same guy who said the whole, when the mother's psychotic, they treat her children thing. Going back to the 5-year-old, this was a long time later. When I was back in my neighborhood, I actually saw her, and I didn't even know she lived there because she didn't come outside that much, because she wasn't allowed outside that much. But her and her sister came to my house because they had been walking around knocking on doors asking for bread and peanut butter. And my mom was mad that I opened the door, and she was like, really? Why the F would you open the door? But luckily my mom gave them like some packs of ramen noodles at least. But yeah, that just shows the situation that she's running around knocking on people's doors asking for peanut butter and bread. So yeah, but she's the one that's put on drugs, being set up to become a junkie, just like her parents. Not that I want to make fun of people for having addiction, but I'm just saying. I think I left off at neurotransmitters that make the body work, leading to brain damage, brain cell death, constipation, quote unquote, which is really anti-cholinergic side effect. They turn off the neurotransmitters that make the bowels and bladder work, leading to bowel impactions and for your bowels to eventually burst. My dad had an aunt that was unalived the same way by abusive relatives. She was forced on these substances. They gave her the metabolic syndrome / diabetes type 2, but they actually diagnosed her with diabetes, because typically, especially when you're younger, but typically these days especially, when you have the metabolic syndrome, the doctors may not even admit to you that you have the high hemoglobin A1C, the high blood sugar, high blood pressure. They may not even admit that to you. They'll just tell you, oh, you're just gaining weight because you're eating more because the drugs make you eat more. That's not true either. That's a watered down lie as well, but I already have plenty of videos about that, so I'm not going to go into that. I even have videos showing a dude who went from a full-blown John Cena bodybuilder, except he didn't look like he was on steroids, to being morbidly obese. And he wasn't able to lose the weight either. And oftentimes they won't even tell you that you have diabetes, which is really common whether you're on these substances or not. A lot of people, in fact, no. I have a video where I show that Quest website claims that 50% of adults at least have diabetes but are undiagnosed. And I'm assuming type 2 because they never even admit that type 1 really exists. There's also a lot of in-betweens that people don't talk about, which these drugs can give you metabolic issues that are just like in-betweens, like in between type 2 and type 1 and things like that. But anywho, this aunt, she got the diabetes, she had the constipation, quote unquote. Really, the neurotransmitters that made her bowels work were turned off. Sometimes they're severely slowed down. So her bowels impacted completely, which I almost died from this a lot of times at 12. And then they burst, stool came out of her mouth and her rectum, and she passed away. But the doctors just lied and said that she had a stroke from the heart failure, because she also had the heart failure, which of course the doctors didn't admit the heart failure was from the drugs either. But that's caused by the drugs too. There's actually a couple different side effects from the drugs messing up your brain function that give you heart problems. But of course also the metabolic issues give you heart problems as well. And of course they'll just say it was a fried chicken. And yeah, so the doctors made up their excuse, but either way she was still unalived by relatives, so work together. And that's something I mention a lot. When you have Jezebelic house nigger parents, they work with white supremacists to unalive you, and then they play the victim in the situation. They cause depression, violence, Parkinson's, dementia, schizophrenia, stomach and colon cancer, brain tumor, diverticulitis, organ failure, comas / 16+ hour comas from serotonin syndrome. But you're gonna get told that you're just quote unquote sleep for 3 days straight plus. Or you're just gonna get told that you're just lazy now. But no, you're in comas actually. You don't go to sleep for 16+ hours in 3 days and stuff like that. That's caused by the brain damage and the drugs creating a chemical imbalance that isn't there and causing you to have too high serotonin levels. And serotonin is actually made in your gut anyways, most of it. So if you really did have low serotonin, that would be a gut microbiome issue and a diet issue. Or I guess more so I meant high serotonin, because I know the mainstream lie is that mental illness comes from having too high serotonin levels. But sometimes they'll say that they're low. Autoimmune disease, from lupus to MCAS, mitochondrial dysfunction, CFO, etc. 4. Pro-chomo philosophies made by racist, eugenicists, pedo R-worder, genocidal, drug-dealing Freemasons, Knights Templar, Triple K branch under the pagan Roman Catholic Church, like Sigmund Freud and Dr. Money. I want to throw in this one lady's name, but I know it could get like the video taken down, so I'll just like edit it in or put it in the description. Margaret, the eugenicist who made the PP clinics that quote-unquote black queens think uplifts them, but it was made to get rid of them and make them not exist anymore. Black queens and black kings. So they say but won't live up to. Cash for kids system. No, hold up. Cash for kids and human cash cow systems are all made for torture and ethnic cleansing. Like often mentioned with the school system branches of the Cash for Kids system, specifically the Catholic boarding schools, were used to torture Northeast African, American Aboriginals, and Mongoloid Native American, or more so the Mongoloid presented ones. They're the ones that really have a lot of these stories. From speaking their native language, essay them because the nuns love essay, unalive them, etc. And if that didn't come out right, the boarding schools are known to be used for ethnic cleansing. That's the summary for that. And all this stuff was made by the same people, the Catholic Church, so they still own all these systems as well. But all the cash for kids system branches and human cash cow system branches, the school system with alternative schools, the boarding schools, SPED, GATE, the other side of SPED, military schools, hospitals, mental hospitals, residential facilities, TTI ranches, other Ramco placements, whatever branches you could think of, were originally completely for ethnic cleansing, and they were made for ethnic cleansing and racial reasons. I forgot to mention the Jim Crow self-confined SPED placements, and they were made by the pagan Roman Catholic Church. Or things like GNet in Georgia, where they have you locked in a cage and stuff until you unalive yourself or they unalive you, which is also connected to the Jim Crow racial self-confined placements. But supposedly those aren't GNet, or some of them are, but some of them aren't. Or according to the Jim Crow self-confined placement staff, GNet is worse, and GNet is for mental illness, quote unquote. Really just where all the melanated people and abusive parents go. Same with the orphanages and hospitals, still owned by Scottish Rite, Moravians, Lords, such as the Lady Lords, those different things like that. Like especially that old commercial that people were saying was a scam. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but like the commercial or the ads on YouTube, that would be like, do you want to purchase some land in Ireland or something like that, or whatever in the world, and do you want to be a lord or a lady? That bullcrap. That's all Scottish stuff. It all goes back to the Scottish Rite. That's why you got to know like the different language terminology to know where these things go back to. Saints like St. Joseph Hospital, stuff like that. St. Bernard's, Baptist Hospital, Catholic rites, Freemason rites, Salvation Army, things like that, etc. Till this day, church and state was never separated because religion is the NWO, which is just like a side note. Being dark-skinned as the original root race is considered a mental illness and has signs of psychopathy and schizo and learning disabilities. It's also sometimes considered to be the cause of the disabilities, being melanated, even though Caucasoids are the minority of the world. Another note, or bullet point, which this is where I'm going to start naming off bullet points. Speaking a non-European language wasn't as considered gibberish in schizophrenia, and people would have and would be locked up for speaking rare languages or their native languages. So you're speaking some rare native language, or you're speaking your Native American language, well, you're schizophrenic. Straight to the insane asylum. Next thing. Oh yeah, I threw this in here. It also makes me think about the whole like thing with America/Babylon going into the regime that it is, and how like a lot of white Americans have this like disdain for Spanish, because they don't know that real Spaniards that conquered the Mexicans and stuff like that, they're the ones who got them to speak Spanish. Spanish is a European language. Real Spaniards are European. They're the ones who conquered the Mexicans, which the Mexicans are a lot of different ethnicities, just like what a lot of places really. But a lot of white Americans don't know that, and even like a lot of Mexicans, they don't know their history either, but that's the goal anyways. That's the point of the school system. Everybody's taken through colonization, trauma-based mind control, including Caucasians, and everybody's brainwashed. There's a lot of revisionist history, and people don't know reality from fiction, and all the melanated people are trying to be house N-words and house Mongoloids, and they're trying to all be white adjacent. Although the black label is only made for a specific group of people, so Africans and everybody else come across the border and get labeled off as white, but that's changing because they're trying to get people out here anyways. And different stuff like that. People are brainwashed, that's the point. Next bullet point. Knowing white people and cops were against you was considered paranoid schizophrenia, still can be till this day, which mostly melanated people get labeled off as schizo anyways. It's a racial label, just like the bad black boy with ADHD label. Melanated people believing in God or the supernatural is considered schizophrenia, religious fervor, and retardation due to poverty and being third world, because you're going against the white supremacist philosophy of atheism, logic, and science. Next bullet point, dryptomania/runaway slave syndrome, which also makes me think about the whole thing with how people who escape their abusive family systems are labeled off as runaways, and they can get charged and locked up in prison or a mental facility. And maybe even get told you're detached from reality and don't understand the dangers of the world, and that's why you left, because you were putting your life at risk and you're pretty much wanting to unalive yourself by leaving danger. Then get drugged and labeled and all that. That goes hand in hand, but the overall point with that is the fact that these same psychiatrists consider slaves who escaped to be mentally ill. Next bullet point, you're a woman, and then you're bipolar or euphemistic and emotional. So the sexism side, because the Caucasian men who are running everything, commonly Rev 29 serpent seed, they didn't really and don't really like women either. That's the patriarchy side as well. Next bullet pointer did already say that. You're smart and think school is boring, or you're upset because of abuse, then you're a retarded bad black boy with ADHD and or ODD, which a lot of people don't know it. Not that I believe in this sociopath label bullcrap, but really when they give an abused kid the ODD label, they're really saying that they're a future sociopath. It's a way of labeling off a younger person as a sociopath without like actually giving them the label, because sometimes they don't want to give you certain labels at certain ages, which is stupid. But it's a racial thing and a sexist thing. The ADHD label is also used against males in general. And I met a lady once who said that she got the bipolar label and she got really screwed up behind taking the psychotropics. And this was a white lady who was in her late 40s. And she said eventually she went to the doctor again and they were like, "You're not bipolar, you have ADHD." And she said that made her not trust doctors for a long time after finding that out. Not that I really believe in either of the labels, to be honest. But the thing is, the ADHD label for an elderly or like, I don't know if that's even middle-aged, elderly white woman is different from, of course, the abused kid or the bad black boy or the bad boy ADHD label. For them, the abused kid or just the sexist one or the racial one, it's also very much seen as a mental label, and you're just seen as like another bad, insane person, which as I always say, I say that one of the ways that society keeps its victims down is by labeling them off as bad, crazy, slow, and retarded. And all those labels pretty much mean the same thing to people. And I even have another video that I'm gonna make, because I seen this video on TikTok and this lady was saying, the caption was, pedos love bad kids, quote unquote. And that's the thing. And then people were talking about Celeste, which that sounds like a human trap situation and some industry stuff. I wonder if her family were Freemasons. But of course, she's just a bad kid. People are mentioning Daniel Bergoli, who was of course a J3W industry plant, who was and is being tortured by her mom and other abusers. And now has cancer, which is common to get from going through Jezebelic abuse. They mentioned Nova from Software and Underbelly. And of course, those are the quote-unquote bad kids, because people really don't care. And I know that, like, the lady who made this video, she didn't have, like, any bad intentions, but this is the issue. But I'm not even going to go into that, because I'll be somewhere else. And as far as the flipped around, half-told story of really trash with the Celeste thing, David himself was a kid when the whole thing started, which just shows that the parents on both sides were involved. It even makes me think of a whole other video where people were speaking word curses and saying that Nova was going to end up like Celeste. And people just really don't care about these minors that people can't care so much about. Anywho, ODD/future sociopath, because you won't follow rules, which equals you won't allow yourself to be abused. So, like, for example, quote black boy, or boy in general, who's like, let's say your teacher tells you to take your hood off and you say no, you'll be labeled off as ODD. Or, an example from my previous situation, I won't give my mom's boyfriend money, that's ODD. And then they were saying obsessive defiant disorder, but apparently it actually stands for oppositional defiant disorder. Or maybe, like, it depends on what the abuser wants it to mean. But then I wrote, and Jezebelic women who hate their sons because they're mad about the dad or their issues with men or whatever in the world, love going along with this and getting their sons put on meth heroin pills / Adderall and Ritalin, and really any other psychotropic, Xanax, whatever. ADHD is a racist and sexist label against males. Next bullet point. You're upset due to SA, you're just bipolar. And I already have plenty of videos and a whole playlist about how the bipolar label is bullcrap, and how, especially with girls who go into the Cash for Kids system, for one, there is no point in time where you're actually sat down and a real evaluation is even done, but it's still bullcrap, because what I meant to mention back with the whole 2-year-old thing is that you're not going to become mentally ill and lose your mind that young. And a lot of people do have, like, BPD attachment issues and limerence, like, really young, but you're really never going to get diagnosed with that anyways, even at 18 plus, because they can't make money off of it, just like they can't make money off of diagnosing you with CPTSD or even PTSD. Like, you're not supposed to get the schizophrenia label till 18 plus, but they'll give it to you at 2. But if you actually have BPD, they won't give that to you because you're too young, quote unquote, but then they'll diagnose somebody who's way younger than you with BPD. You're not going to even be full-blown insane and really even have a mental label that early unless you're in a really, really bad, like, SA situation. Other than that, typically you're not going to be messed up already, not even to the point to really even need a mental label. In fact, back in 2020, when I first started making videos about the MH system, before I started calling it the Cash for Kids system and lumped all the different branches together, I made a video about some people who did a study on how literally all the kids who go into these facilities come out with a bipolar label, and none of them even have bipolar disorder. They just throw the bipolar label on you because, for one, for the insurance company to pay them to keep you in there, they have to give you a mental label. They have to say, they have this and this is what we're treating the person for. That's why with therapists, before they give you a diagnosis, if they do, which I know some people say therapists can't give a diagnosis, but people will do whatever they want to do. They'll often start off by putting transitional disorder, like you're having trouble adjusting to, like, a new place you moved to or something like that. They'll put that in the system as your disorder, because they have to put something in the system for the insurance company to pay them. This is why you're gonna get a label, aside from it being used by your abusers and by the Cash for Kids system staff to gaslight you about your abuse. You're gonna get the label for them to be able to get their paycheck, and then you're gonna be sent home with the label, even though it's pretty much like a placeholder. I guess maybe that's like a good summary of it, but you're never gonna meet somebody that actually has symptoms of bipolar, and it's only gonna be girls that get the bipolar label. A boy is not going to get the bipolar label. But to throw something else in there, it does make me think back to two things. One, a guy who was talking about how his little cousin, was saying that his dad beats on him, but his dad just told everybody he was bipolar and delusional and making it up. And people just pretend to believe that stuff because they don't care anyways. And he was a scapegoat. And the dude who said this was his little cousin, he said that he doesn't do anything about it because he's a scapegoat too. The usual excuses. And then another situation where a boy was saying that he didn't even get dragged to the cash for kids system. His mom had the bipolar label, and she was making him take her drugs. I'm not even going to say meds, because these aren't meds, and there are no meds to treat quote-unquote mental illness anyways, but he didn't even have the label, which he could easily get put on him anyways, and she was just forcing her meds, quote-unquote, down his throat. And, like, even boys that had the BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, not bipolar. Bipolar is commonly abbreviated as BP/1 or BP/2. Boys with the BPD attachment issues and limit obsession and sexual addiction, who have been, like, sleeping around since 8 and stuff like that, and chase after chomos, just like with the girls who do it, they're going to get diagnosed with ADHD or bare minimum depression. The girl is going to get whatever label. Typically, she's just going to get called a whore and stuff like that by the staff and by her abusers, or by her other abusers. But she's also maybe going to get the bipolar label. But you're never going to meet somebody that actually has bipolar. And BPD are symptoms from trauma that somebody can get at any point in time and lose at any point in time as well. A lot of people who have those symptoms these days, depending on who they go to and what their ethnicity is, they may just get the autism label. So, but I'm going to go into that eventually. Next bullet point. You believe in natural medicine? Schizophrenia. You believe that Dr. Sebi was a good doctor? Schizophrenia. No, black nigger schizophrenia. If you like Yaki Waken, you have black schizophrenia and you're a cult leader. Or cult member. Shoot, they'll really put that on paper. They'll put that in the system, but they'll put it in like the section where only the doctors can see it, but you can't see it. But of course, if you're an abuse victim and your abuser's like an abusive guardian is over your abuse situation and all of that, you're never going to get to see your medical records anyway, so it doesn't matter. In fact, that's another thing. A lot of these abuse victims never actually get to know what they got labeled with. So, like, their abusers won't tell them. And supposedly due to, like, stuff with you being underage or, like, your abusers just being over you even at 18 plus, especially in, like, conservatorships and stuff, obviously. Supposedly the doctors don't have to tell you what your label is. Next bullet point is a quote-unquote black man who knows real history, knows where he came from, / his ethnicity or ethnic origin, knows the truth of the matrix. That's considered paranoid schizophrenia, bipolar, effeminate. Because of course the bipolar label is a sexist label for females. So if a dude did get the bipolar label, they're saying that he's effeminate. That's what the doctor's saying, even though they won't like admit that. That's what they're saying. Okay, so next bullet point. You know that the truth about the Swedish, Irish, German, Russian, Turkish, Polish, etc., Caucasian Europeans running around Northeast Africa and even other places in Africa and even the U.S. claiming to be the original Northeast Africans or the natives that are trafficking their kids and others. If you know the truth about that, you're anti-white, anti-Christ, anti-Catholic, paranoid schizophrenic, anti-SEMMETIC, going into a nigger psychotic break. Or even you'll run into the white people that'll call you an NAZIS. And that's something that's really annoying. I hate when to manipulate people, white supremacists / the white psychosis branch of schizonarchism, they'll label off melanated people as being NAZIS and being in different white supremacist organizations, which there's a lot I could say about that. Next bullet point, a woman or melanated woman with back, stomach, or pelvic pain. The doctor will say, you're emotional, overdramatic with OCD, anxiety, schizophrenia, a hoe who sleeps around and has the STD, and eats too much chicken and watermelon. I guess maybe that's the something. Next bullet point, you're dark skinned and can read. You're an autistic, schizo, sociopath, high-functioning threat, which even goes into the whole quote-unquote you're acting white thing. And now, when a quote-unquote black person or Mexican especially in the U.S. is like considered smart, you can read well, you like to read, maybe you like Harry Potter or something, you like things that are considered nerdy or like quirky, all that stuff is considered autism now. So there's that. Next bullet point. Oh no, another thing I forgot to say. A lot of psychiatrists still see autism no different from being schizophrenic or a quote-unquote psychopath. And especially if you're melanated or you're a male, you're more likely to get one of those labels that goes along with that. I even remember like in one part of my situation, one of the psychiatrists said that the diagnosis didn't make a difference because there is no difference between autism and schizophrenia. And then he said that he wanted to get the primary care physician that my mom used to get me labeled off as Asperger's. He wanted to get her fired because he said that Asperger's didn't exist anymore, but then the other doctors, they didn't want me to get the autism label, especially high functioning autism, because it would be easier for me to go back and sue them for the different stuff that happened if they would have gave me that label. That's really what that was about. Next bullet point. You're being abused or sex trafficked, if I can even say that. Nope. You're just having a grandiose and persecutory delusion that a man would even dare look in your direction, or that your family is against you. And then you'll have those manipulative abusers that'll come around you and circle around you and do a kumbaya and be like, we just care about you, and we just like to essay you because it's just showing our love, stuff like that. This is done on purpose because they get paid to, but also because they're sadistic, evil people, and the racial side to it is very big. And actually, going back to that whole quote-unquote bad kid thing, people will often excuse not caring about these things because, of course, some people say they don't want to get involved and there's nothing they can do anyways, but a lot of people say that's just what happens to the bad, crazy, retarded, slow people, because that's what they deserve for their behavior. And what else did I have to say about that? I'm totally forgetting something, but I'm going to keep going. Next bullet point. Autism equals psychopath, schizo. And I know people are going to say, how dare you? This is what the doctors say. So if anybody even watches it, never ever... people are going to say whatever they want to say because it's the internet. Mostly mad white boys and white guys even really play all those little manipulative games, but what was I even going to say? Oh yeah, just because maybe you were lucky enough to get the autism label but you don't have an abusive family system and you feel like you actually had the autism label and it makes you feel better for some reason, often because people want to answer for why they don't fit in and they feel like they need an excuse to other people for why they don't act like everybody else. Keep in mind that most people who get dragged through these systems and get these bullcrap labels get them because they're in an abuse situation and they have abusive parents or no parents at all, so they're up for grabs to these systems and the labels are used against them. People from healthy families or safe enough families or abusive families that at least wouldn't throw them into these systems refuse to believe that these things exist, which is so funny because so many people go through these systems and this is what most taxpayer money goes to, human trafficking. So you may have had the 1% rare happy-go-lucky experience of having these bullcrap labels because you actually had people that cared about you and would protect you, but most people being dragged through these systems and getting these labels don't have that. That's why they got the label in the first place. And psychiatrists did and still do see it as psychopathy and schizophrenia. And it was even considered a version of early schizophrenia or childhood schizophrenia. That's what they used to call it, but I think they started calling it early onset schizophrenia, but still they typically only give the label to melanated people anyways. So next bullet point. I already have a whole playlist about this. Typically, especially these days, that people that are getting the autism label or the neurodivergent label, which includes ADHD and ADD and different stuff like that now. And trauma also causes neurodivergence. So people who are anointed or prophetic, which is also now being labeled off as being an empath or a dark empath. A chosen one, which is another label that I don't like. Starseed. People are using that label, but they don't know that that label is really used for for example, the book Percy Jackson and Lightning Thief books. One example of what a starseed would actually mean. A starseed was originally made for Nephilims or hybrids that are half-breeds or come from wherever in the world that look enough like human beings to where people can say, okay, maybe you are a human being. And then people may even think that oh, maybe they're just neurodivergent. But a starseed, people are trying to intermingle that with being anointed or a chosen one, which I don't even like that chosen one bullcrap. I feel like it's too grandiose. But starseed actually has something to do with people who aren't human, but people are getting confused about what it means and they're using it for anything. Although anointed people do have big stars, like how David had a star, and like how Jesus had a star. David had one too, but people may get that mixed up with the whole J through W 6-pointed star occultic thing. That's something else. But Africans, especially Nigerians, know a lot about the whole star. Like when people are born or before they're born, there's a star, and if they're more gifted and stuff like that, it's bigger. But that's not really a big known about thing in the West. Well, Western people don't believe in spiritual stuff anyways because of the white supremacist philosophy of atheism, but Africans know a lot about it. That's the point. Some of them do. and then gifted, which is a term used in the GATE branch of SPED, which is a part of the school system branch of the Cash for Kids system. Kids that are labeled off as autism these days is being anointed or prophetic, to make a long story short, or gifted. So, I know people with the autism label will feel like, I hate when people say that, because then you make it seem like we have to live up to this standard, and I'm somebody with the autism label and I feel like I'm autistic, and I'm not really talking about any of that. I don't really believe in any of this stuff like that anyway, so I don't know what to tell people. I feel like they're all just insults. Next bullet point. Funny how you can't plead insanity because then you're fine and faking it, but any other time you're quote unquote insane. So like, people want to label you off as insane, you say you're not, you're just having delusions that you're not insane. You commit a crime and you want to plead insanity, then people are like, oh, they're just faking it because they want to pretend they're insane because they want to get off. Honestly, you'd rather go to prison than a mental facility anyways. So I've always noticed that, and that's really crazy to me how that goes. Next bullet point. Guy I recently met. Usual psychiatry abuse, schizo quote unquote story. Mom ruined his life, got his kids not allowed around him, long story. He has the usual story, the Jezebelic mom that was telling people that he was schizo since he was a baby. So from the moment he was a newborn on up, she was like, oh, he's schizophrenic. And it's like, well, and it's really insane because it's like, what could a baby even really do or say that can't even move or walk or talk, or can barely move or talk, even really do to like show that they're even mentally ill, quote unquote, anyways? It's just so stupid. And not to mention the fact that Munchausen moms always feel like they don't have whatever their kids have, even though it's not how that works. But anywho, his mom sabotage his adoption. So like, some lady wanted to adopt him and she was rich, but he would tell her about his abuse and she wanted to talk to his mom about adopting him, which I feel is really stupid anyways. You can never really go to an abuser like in that way. It's a certain way things have to be done. You have to like play the game that the abuser plays. You have to like manipulate. But either way, the lady wanted to adopt him. She would go to the mom and ask stuff about him, but the mom was really neglectful, so she was never even really around him to tell her stuff about like where he was at, what he liked, and what he liked doing. And he would tell a lady who wanted to adopt him about his abuse and stuff, and then eventually, for whatever stupid reason, she went to his mom, as people do, about his abuse accusations, quote unquote, and she was like, oh, he's just schizophrenic and he can't tell reality from fiction. And then the lady was like, oh, never mind. And I usually don't do this, I'm trying to do it quick because my phone's on 8, but the thing that his mom said reminded me of one of my old abuse evidence videos, or really a lot of them, but one specific one of my mom's boyfriend.
Who said anything about you? Her. Well, you were y'all. Same way she did. She ain't catch from y'all. She heard y'all. She right over there saying who's y'all. I'm y'all. But she's straight A student. By now she can figure out who y'all is.
In this video, I don't really remember what happened. I think he was mad because I wouldn't give him, oh yeah, he was mad because I wouldn't give him money, because that's what the title says. And he was talking junk to me and my sister about this.
I don't even get to come to the doctor. I ain't gotta do this. I ain't got nothing. I don't even get to the doctor. If I need to do this, I gotta lose this. I ain't gotta do this. Y'all. She really wants to figure out who y'all is by now.
Oh yeah, and then my sister kept saying, who is y'all?
Shut up! For real, dog. Real talk. They don't know goddamn dog. I feel like they bust them in their motherfucking mouth when she needs to. Real. They don't know damn dog. That's what they do. She gonna talk on Trump, huh? She on with the you just they don't know damn dog. They act like they don't.
Hold up, I'm looking for a specific part.
Yeah, like it's funny and shit, man. She ain't funny. Yeah, see, right there, cupcake when you show the smiles on their damn face while they keep screaming. Yeah, see, but trying to lose y'all. You was trying to figure it out. Consider the homework assignment. I'm doing it, shit off on me. Ain't nothing wrong. I'm doing. I ain't never done none of that, niggas. I'm doing. I got a little mouth. They don't make me no less normal.
Oh yeah, I guess that could be thrown in too. The fact that abusers will say that they're the quote unquote normal one, although sometimes they will admit that they're demon possessed. Like my mom's boyfriend did, and I even still have videos of him crying one day talking about he was demon possessed. And on the Prt1 channel, I did have a video of my dad going on this manifestation rant talking about he had been alive for over 500 years, but CPS got some of those deleted, so. But that's still not the part I'm looking for, though. Hold up.
I ain't detached from reality, schizophrenic, ADHD, none of that shit. I'm normal.
That's not what I'm looking for either, though. Hold up.
Anytime she mad, y'all already know what time it is. Stop talking to me, detached reality shit like you wasn't part of what the fuck just happened earlier.
I didn't know what you're talking about.
It makes too much sense. It makes too much sense. That's why you don't know. It makes too much sense. Oh, it makes too much sense. Like you don't damn all the goddamn yelling at you about damn wrong phone, all this shit. Come on, man. Leave that detached reality shit out of my conversation.
That's not it either, though. Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking for the part where he screams, "Shut the F up with that detached from reality stuff." Maybe I already went over it. Or maybe I'm skipping through it too much, or maybe, like, I don't know. But that was said pretty often, so. And it's like, the fact that that even happened, though, does show that realistically, she didn't really want a kid to begin with. People want some, like, baby doll, puppy robot that they can control that isn't traumatized, and that's really not how that works anyways. But he has a usual story of billions of people with how the mental health system is. He even told me about how, like, when he was not even 7 years old, he was with his grandma, and she wanted to learn how to knit, and she was like, "What do you want me to knit you?" And he said that he told her a straitjacket because throughout his life he had become so used to being put in straitjackets that he felt they were comfortable, so he got his grandma to knit him a straitjacket. And that's kind of a long story, but he told me that he got so used to wearing them, he eventually learned how to get himself out of one. And so when he would get locked up, he'd be put in straitjackets, he learned how to wiggle his way out. One of the things about these word curses, like I mentioned, when my older scapegoat sister that was driven crazy from all the essay and being gaslit about all the essay, the labels are also word curses. Just like I had that one video with the dude literally saying at the juvenile justice and prison, well, not even just juvenile justice, the adult prison branch of the cash for kids system and human cash cow systems, he was saying that pretty much they create an issue that isn't already there. These labels are word curses. They bash into your head that you have problems that you don't have, that don't even exist a lot of the time, until you actually have them and you believe it, and until the word curse works. Next bullet point I